mitigate, resolve. The U.S. offensive cyber operations benefits outweigh the harms. Our first contention is critical infrastructure. Infrastructure is becoming a target of choice. Wagner 16 says, infrastructure is becoming a target of choice among both individual and state-sponsored cyber attackers who recognize the value of disrupting security systems that were previously thought of as impenetrable. This has served to demonstrate just how vulnerable cities, states, and countries have become to the growing importance of achieving global risk agility in the face of such a threat. Shalal S13 says Iran has launched increasingly sophisticated cyber attacks and a growing confrontation with its adversaries, including the United States. 54% of critical infrastructure is expected an attack in the next 12 months. Homeland Security 19 says the vulnerability of critical infrastructure to cyber attacks has potential to cause severe financial, environmental, and infrastructure damage. 54% expect an attack on the critical infrastructure in the next 12 months. Muley 19 finds that cyber attacks have a huge effect on everyday life. Critical infrastructure facilities, whether they are power plants, national railway, and local underground systems, or other forms of public transport, are increasingly being targeted. Cyber attacks could cut off the supply of electricity to hospitals, homes, schools, and factories. We rely so heavily on the efficient supply of electricity that its loss would also carry heavy implications for other vital services. Our first impact is preventing the loss of electricity. With new cyber technology, big countries can hack into each other's necessary technology. Kaplan 19 says all the major cyber powers have been able to hack into one another's critical infrastructure, power grids, financial systems, transportation lines, which have been hooked up to computer networks for the past 25 years. From time to time, these countries have actually hacked into these things. An example is Russia hacking into a U.S. electrical grid. Russia hacked a U.S. power plant control system. Naylor 18 says hackers were able to gain access to at least one power plant's control system. If this happens again, then hackers across the globe could possibly take out the U.S.'s entire electric grid. Power outages are very expensive. Neverman 19 says power outages cost between $18 and $33 billion a year in the United States. Larson 15 says that many people would die from hunger, from starvation, from lack of water, and from social disruption. 90% of the U.S. population would die. We're talking about total devastation. This is bad because 295 million people die as of right now. This number can only go up as our population is increasing. Contingent 2 is small businesses. A majority of ransomware attacks are against small businesses. Davis 19 says 70% of ransomware attacks in 2018 targeted small businesses, with an average ransom demand of $116,000. Companies that are hit by ransomware attacks fail. Riley 19 says, when it comes to ransomware, it only takes one person to cripple the kingdom. Of companies hit by at least one malware attack in the last year, 1/5 had to completely stop operations immediately. The impact is losing money. U.S. small businesses lose $75 billion a year to ransomware attacks. Goldman 16 says, ransomware causes $75 billion a year in damages to small businesses in the U.S. This costs companies $8,500 per hour. Thanks to cyber attacks, these small businesses are losing a lot of money. Small businesses are a major part of the U.S. economy, according to J.P. Morgan 19. Small businesses with fewer than 500 employees account for 99% of all business establishments in the U.S. and are prevalent across the entire country. These businesses accounted for 45% of GDP. Small businesses account for 33% of exports. U.S. small businesses employ nearly half of all U.S. employees, 48%, and contribute over 43% to net job creation. Thus, we urge a neg ballot.
Time starts now. We affirm our first contention is preventing oil prices from going up from Iran's disruptive behavior. Iran has threatened to close the Strait of Hormuz. A senior Iranian military official said in response to U.S. sanctions on oil, if we are prevented from using it, we will close it. According to Meredith, Iran has begun to take the initiative to close the strait by destroying tankers in the strait. This is very bad because according to Lessing, the strait is the world's most important choke point for oil, shipping billions of dollars worth per day. According to Cross, partial blockage could raise oil prices by $50 a barrel. And just a threat kept prices above $100 in the past. $100 a barrel in the past. According to Mullaney, oil could reach $200 a barrel if Iran closes the strait or takes military action. Over 80 countries import oil, and 15 countries are oil dependent, according to Stebbins, so the shock in oil prices would hurt economies all over the world, including the U.S., and put millions into poverty. According to Ahrens, oil prices at $110 a barrel would cause a world recession. A major economic crisis in 2008 caused 30 million to go into unemployment, according to Liao and Lim. This also causes mass death, as, according to Chandler, the unemployed have a doubled or tripled mortality rate. According to the Cyber Defense magazine, U.S. offensive cyber operations have been able to temporarily stop this threat by attacking a critical database used by Iran to attack oil tankers and degraded Iran's ability to covertly target shipping traffic. Our second contention, preventing conventional and nuclear war. Subpoint A, an alternative for Israel. According to Zana, the great tactics of offensive cyber operations are key for accomplishing objectives at a low risk. This alternative is important because, according to Walsh, as tensions have been arising, Iran warned an all-out war would ensue if the U.S. or Saudi Arabia launched military strikes against it. This illustrates the impact of a military strike. According to Kotzman, Israel set a 9-month deadline for an alternative before it was set to launch a preemptive military strike against Iran. Importantly, the U.S. and Israel were able to develop Stuxnet to set back Iran's nuclear program, according to Takahashi. The impact of this war, stated by Israel, would be thousands lost as a result of an all-out war. The second impact is nuclear war. According to Farley, Israel considered using nukes in the past and may very well use them to launch preemptive attacks against Iran with nukes. According to Ward, one strike could kill hundreds of thousands, and calculating the long-term effect, the rapid cooling climate could cause mass famine and could end human civilization. So point B, stopping nuclear proliferation. According to the Chatham House, the U.S. uses offensive cyber operations to set back Iranian and North Korean nuclear capabilities. One famous attack that we already mentioned is Stuxnet. Stopping nuclear proliferation leads to two impacts. First, helping stop Israel from using nukes. One of Israel's biggest concerns, according to Farley, is nuclear proliferation. Because of this, Israel would consider using a nuclear weapon to halt nuclear capabilities or prevent the sale of nukes to non-state governments. Secondly, helping mitigate the risk of miscalculation. Humans are prone to error, and as the nuclear arms race advances, so does the risk that a mistake will happen in which a nuke will be launched. According to Straub 19, the world almost ended as a result of miscalculation in the Cold War. Our third contention is improving U.S. military capabilities. Subpoint A, cyber warfare is cheap and potent. According to the SANS Institute, cyber warfare is easier to organize and far cheaper to use. According to Fujidoc, over 30 countries are building up their cyber capabilities due to their potency. A cyber attack on the military, the science board said, might result in guns, missiles, and bombs failing to detonate, or failing to fire or detonate, or being directed against our own troops, or food, water, ammo, and fuel not arriving when or where needed, or the loss of position/navigation ability, or other critical warfighter enablers. Thus, cyber warfare is very capable, and a good offensive cyber capability would result in an amazing military arsenal for achieving future missions. Subpoint B, switching to cyber operations directly saves lives. According to Morrow, cyber warfare costs fewer lives. If an offensive cyber operation is used in place of a soldier to accomplish a mission, then of course lives would be saved. According to Carlson and Fisher, the U.S. has 1.3 million active duty troops and 865,000 in reserves. Even if a soldier doesn't die on the battlefield, there are still great risks to mental health, and one such risk is PTSD. According to Revelant, 20 U.S. veterans commit suicide every day. According to Gilchrist, Trump decided to use an offensive cyber operation on Iran instead of a conventional strike, which saved over 100 lives. Thus we affirm.
Okay, so why would Iran cause a war that they would be a part of?
Why would Iran cause a war?
Yeah.
Well, if military strikes were used against Iran, they said they would start a war. You know, if a country attacks you with a military strike or they launch a nuclear weapon against you, it would be kind of natural to start a war. And they've said it themselves that they will start a war.
What's the probability of them actually starting a war?
What's the problem? Well, I would say it's 100% because they have said that they will start a war if we use the military strike or nuclear weapon against them.
Okay. You can have a question.
Okay. So you said 54% of infrastructure expects attacks in the next 12 months. Can you read me from case what the date for that evidence is?
Hold on. It's Homeland Security 2019. Okay. Can I have a question?
Sure.
So you said there was a miscalculation in the Cold War. Wasn't that a really long time ago? Don't you think it would get? Don't you think we're more technologically advanced now, and miscalculation isn't much of a threat anymore?
Well, no. I have evidence that states that miscalculation. I have evidence that states that miscalculation is probable.
How probable?
I'm not sure exactly how probable, but the risk is so great.
Thank you. You can have a question.
So you said critical infrastructure is increasingly being targeted, but do you know what percentage of that is a result of OCOs?
Okay.
No, I can't tell you the percent, but I can tell you the card is basically just saying that like it's other countries are turning to critical civilian infrastructure. Another question? Let me see. So, don't you think Iran would like hurt themselves if they close the strait?
Well, no, Iran's reducing their oil dependency to 0.
But have they reduced it to 0 yet?
No, they're
So
going
they
to
still
soon,
depend
though.
on oil, right? So
Not
then,
quite.
so then can I assume that they wouldn't do that?
Their
to
dependency
themselves?
isn't 100%. Their dependency is lowering, and it's reaching
Yeah, but
0 next
Can
year.
you tell me how much it's been lowered so far?
I'm not sure exactly how much it's been
Okay,
lowered.
so I can assume that it has not been lowered at all. You can have a question.
Okay, for small businesses, you said that ransomware is a big problem, but can you read me from case where you explain that this is solely a result of offensive cyber operations?
Let me see. It says power outages, so which is a cyber operation.
No, for small businesses, ransomware attacks.
Why is that the case? 70% of ransomware attacks in 2018 target small businesses. It doesn't say.
So
Yeah.
why would you assume that it's from offensive cyber operations? So y'all used about a minute.
Yeah.
Or like a minute.
Okay, so off the clock, we're not going to go way down their case, going sort of by line, contention, subpoint, everything. Alright. Alright, time starts now. My bonus first contention, they talk about how Iran will close the, sort of pretty much oil prices will go up thanks to Iran. So, they say that I guess they're referencing here the Strait of Hormuz. It says that this is C19 says that Iran is unlikely to try to close the strait for several reasons. The regime surely recognizes its military disadvantage. It's cognizant of its own dependence on the strait. About 70% of Iran's budget revenues are generated by oil exports, all of which must transit the strait. The fact alone would make a preemptive effort to close the strait would be self-destructive. So this also goes over a point in my opponent's in the class, the Crossfire, he talks about how there's a percentage they're using this. We tell you that it's 70%. That's still a very high amount. Okay, they go to their nuclear war how it's nuclear war is an option. How Israel is using an option. The United States they talk about how Israel is going to use nuclear war to prevent Iran developing nukes when they say this is good because Israel would, they said the United States would help Israel, right? Yeah, this is wrong. As we give you the card, the Shalah SF-13 says card that pretty much says that Iran has launched cyber attacks, pretty much retaliating against Stuxnet. So you see all this is this card is from 2013, which is recently just after Stuxnet, which was launched in 2010. So they talk about how it's a separate option for Israel. They don't give any warranting about how Israel and the United States will actually join together and actually prevent this from happening. Their impact is all-out war. They say thousands of people. Even if their impact is correct here, how war would be an option, they don't even give us an amount. They say thousands of people. This could be 2,000 people. Yes, it's a lot of people. But we say that 295 million people will die thanks to loss of electricity, which would be a cause from all those cyber operations. So going to the nuclear war contention, how Iran is this is sort of contradicting their case when they say that Israel is willing to use nukes against Iran if Iran ever almost has access to the nukes. Well, this is wrong because how would they get nukes if they don't have nukes? Exactly. There would be no nuclear war. There should be Israel launching nukes at Iran, which wouldn't be necessarily an all-out loss of They talk about nuclear proliferation. They say Stuxnet was a good example. Yet it doesn't matter if the Stuxnet, they already launched. We tell you the same card that says that they retaliated towards this and this affected critical infrastructure. They also talk, This is also going on like how Israel uses nukes and to stop them. This isn't once again this contradicting their case about nuclear war and how humanity will fall. As someone say that miscalc is as they say it's very probable and it's bad. Yes, miscalculation is bad. Yet when you think about it, and they don't really link this to the fact that they talk about how nuclear war and how this can be considered let's just say it's whatever United States, and this could have been someone completely different. So the fact that the miscalc is like just completely taken out of proportion when realistically they give us the Cold War as an example, which is just already alone is pretty long ago. They go into their contention 3, which is cyber war, is better than like conventional warfare or the army, and how it's cheaper and it will always work. Yet, they give us like one example in their entire case, and that's only Stuxnet. They don't give us another example of a real not realistic, but another like another like instance of when the United States is like, successful in attack. They only give you Stuxnet, which is from 2010. So we can just assume that this is the only time they give us in case. So this is wrong. They talk about how it's cheap, how it's cheaper and it'll always work, and how it saves lives. 1.3 million people 1.3 million people have troops, and how they suffer from mental health. This impact is once again pretty small, but even then, this doesn't completely obliterate with OCOs. Just some good of it. Thank you.
One thing is that so the U.S. with the NSA stuff in Pakistan, yeah, so actually
Are we stopping after something?
No, we're doing the whole round.
Yeah, we started around at this time yesterday.
Let's go.
Okay, off the clock roadmap, I'm going to be going down their case and then defending ours. Okay. Time starts now. Okay, their first contention, they talk about critical infrastructure. They say that 54% of attacks are already being it's already being targeted and this is going up. There's a major flaw with this argument. They don't tell us how this is unique to offensive cyber operations. They simply say that, oh, this is going up. First of all, they don't provide any solvency. They just say it's happening. They don't say they don't directly link it to offensive cyber operations. They say that, oh, this is going to happen and that they're already being targeted. They don't say how this is essentially unique to our argument. If anything, our arguments actually solves for this issue with defending forward. The U.S. is like the most massive major power in the world, and if a system was going to mess with the U.S., of course the U.S. is going to go after them. If someone's targeting the U.S.'s systems and it's going to lead to an all-out lead to this impact, then the U.S. is going to defend themselves. They talk about critical infrastructure and how it's been up for 25 years. This is a major problem because it's been up for 25 years and nothing's really happened. They talk about all these critical, all these massive problems that can happen, like world catastrophe. They say it's been up for 25 years and none of this has happened. They talk about how Russia's been in. Okay, Russia's got in, but they didn't do anything, and nothing's really happened because the U.S. the U.S. has already been hit by a malicious cyber attack on its power grids, but has seen no advisory effects. SOZAC 19. The U.S. power sector marked it a sober milestone. Anonymous Western utility became the first to report a malicious cyber event that disrupted grid operations. Denial of services attack disabled Cisco adaptive security application devices, bringing power grids and controlling systems. There were no blackouts, no harm to power grids, and eventually very little effect on the Western transmission grid. Barrett furthers in 2019 that let's not overpay this. There was no blackout. It's the first known time a cyber attack has caused this kind of disruption, which again does not affect the actual flow of electricity as the U.S. power grid company. Power grids are very hard to hack, but the worst case scenarios we're imagining aren't that likely. Nor is the short-term crisis. Bringing down the grid is a lot harder than just flicking a switch. So they say it's been up for 25 years. The impacts haven't been seen because they can't be seen because systems are very hard to hack. Now let's move on to their small business. Again, they don't provide any link. They don't directly connect it to OCOs. They have no solvency. We solved this by defending forward. Move on to their texting on our case. They talk about how war doesn't scale up and how first of all, this is nuclear war. We tell you it's a couple thousand lives. You have to use common sense.
if a war were to go out in the Middle East, this would be bad for everyone involved. This costs lives, money, land, lives. People are going to die. They simply say, oh, it's going to be 1,000 people. We don't know that. You can't just assume that a war isn't going to kill a lot of people. They talk about how our Stuxnet doesn't matter. First of all, we stopped their nuclear like transmission. They track their nuclear development by a massive amount of years. And they talk about how it doesn't matter because they have retail. They don't exactly tell us how many people are going to be, or how much more cyber attacks have gone up against small businesses. They simply say it's happening. They don't tell us any real impact to this, or how they don't directly link it. Talk about how we only give Stuxnet. It's common sense that when you use like cyber, you're going to be able to save lives and prevent people from dying in conflict, which is we give 1.3 million troops already. We have to look at our impacts. We simply tell you that when Iran is backed into a corner, they are going to use the only assets available to them, which is going to be the Strait of Hormuz. And if they go up, we've already seen this happening. 30 million. They can't give us an example of when their impacts have been seen. We already gave the example. 30 million people going into poverty and dying because of those impacts. And we simply outweigh because this leads to war sessions that are everybody involved, and we stop nuclear war and proliferation.
6. Joshua, you need the timer. Timer.
I have a timer on my computer.
No, you just put my phone on the bed.
Oh, you're at it. Okay,
Time starts now. I have the first question.
go for it.
Can you name any other example of a cyber attack the United States has used other than Stuxnet?
Okay, I can tell you. Like, what are you getting at here? What's
Oh, I mean, I'm just asking because like that's the only example you give in your entire case is Stuxnet. I'm just asking, like, is there any other example where this could be like related?
Can you give us an example of people dying from cyber attacks, from ransomware attacks?
No, I cannot give you
But
an
we can
example
tell you
from
that because
ransomware
of this
attacks.
Stuxnet attacks that we prevent nuclear proliferation, which stops nuclear war and miscalculation.
Okay.
Can I have a question? Okay. You talked about how the grids have been hacked. Can you give us an example of like this happening and killing people?
No, is we give you the card.
So you can't.
No, I tell you the card that Russia's already hacked into this, right? And so if they
What was
were
the
to
effect? What
the
happened?
fact they didn't do anything.
They
The
didn't do
point,
anything?
It doesn't matter. The point is just that they.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. That the point is they got into the power grid and therefore they can turn off the pretty much electric.
We tell you that
electric
because
grid.
Iran has already been backed to this corner. They already increased prices. They already put 30 million people are dead in poverty. And you give us one example, and then you tell us there's no impact, there's no lives, and it doesn't matter.
Well, of course it hasn't happened. That's
hasn't?
like sort of the point is that if this were to continue, then this would happen. Okay. I have a question.
Go for it.
You talk about and like you said that Israel would use nukes. Like, why would they use nukes again? And like, can you just clarify that for me?
Okay, if a country's backed into a corner and the only thing they can do, they're not
Not
gonna.
Israel. I'm not talking about Iran. I'm talking about Israel.
Okay, if a situation where miscalculation were to happen or a nuclear war to happen, you're gonna use whatever you can to defend yourself. Is that correct?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I don't understand how does that relate to my
So-
question. Why would Israel use nukes against Iran if Iran does not have access to nukes?
Okay, we tell you that because of nuclear proliferation, which we stopped, this problem could arise. And
Sorry,
they're gonna use any
can I
defense.
follow up? You said proliferation. Like, what stopped that?
Stuxnet.
From 2010?
Stuxnet stopped nuclear.
Wait, from
yes.
from like 2010. Okay, they completely stopped it.
Okay, we we
Okay.
halted the thing, but what did you do? What do you do against it? Nothing. We
Oh,
tell.
Yeah, you're right. We can't.
A
It's sort of
temporary
the
solution
point.
is better than no solution at all. And if offensive cyber operations are continuing to be used, then it would make sense that this would stop further nuclear development.
All right, you can have a question.
Okay, can you tell? Can you directly link like OCO, like critical infrastructure and attacks to?
Yes, we. I don't know how many times you want me to say this card. The Shalal is a 13 cards that says Iran has launched increasingly sophisticated cyber attacks and a growing connotation of its adversaries, including
Why?
the United States.
It wasn't going to do that anyway.
It was against Stuxnet. Your partner called for that against during prep. Have a question.
Go for it.
What is so how does nuclear war between how does Iran obtain nuke? That was was a minute and 55 seconds. Or sorry, that wasn't used. It's how much time we used so far.
Minute and what?
We just used a minute and 55 seconds. Or in total.
Okay, so y'all have a minute.
You need a minute.
Okay. I need a timer.
Definitely put install for a minute.
I need a timer.
Yeah. Wait. Walker, where's your phone?
There you
Oh,
go.
sorry.
Did you turn it off, George?
Here, unlock it.
Okay, so off the clock roadmap, I'll be basically going down our case, supporting our contentions, extending, and then I will go down their case, attack it. I'll do some front mining, and then at the end, if I have time, I'll do some weighing. Okay. So our first contention basically states that Iran is retaliating on the U.S. because the U.S. launched a couple Stuxnet worm on them. Early 19 says the use of cyber weapons to undermine critical infrastructure is becoming more common. So this card explains that cyber weapons are becoming the norm, and it explains what the Stuxnet worm is and what they were straight up giving Iran a reason to attack us back. When they retaliate, they take out our power grids so they take out our power grids, which causes about 295 million people to die. This is a huge problem. Our second contention focuses on the argument that Iran will hack the U.S. to small businesses. You may think that this argument is not substantial, but that would be wrong because small businesses account for 99% of businesses and 45% of global GDP or national GDP. This means that 1/5 of these businesses being targeted causes the 9% to drop in GDP, sending the U.S. into a recession. Coast it all 18 says so the typical output cost of a recession is close to 5%. This means that we would be sent into one of the most extreme recessions the U.S. has ever seen. So small businesses are vulnerable, which is why they're targets. We can save ourselves from a recession and from 90% of the population from dying by a power grid hack. Now onto my opponent's case. So starting my opponent's first contention about the Iranian oil crisis. They say that Iran will close the Strait of Hormuz to cut other countries off of their oil, but we can directly counter this by using the Sing 19 card, which says Iran is unlikely to close the strait. Basically, just explaining why Iran would not close the strait because it would hurt them too. So move to the first impact. They say they have a global recession and 30 million people in poverty or something like that. But since we take out any chance of Iran closing the strait, so they cannot have access to these impacts. Now we'll go to their second contention. They say that Iran would be in an all-out war, but if anything, U.S. OCOs would actually worsen the war because using common sense, we can say that the U.S. interfering with their OCOs would have a reverse and negative effect. We can turn this on them by saying that we need to get rid of OCOs because it would actually make it worse. Now move to the end of their first subpoint in their second contention. They say that one strike would end all human civilization, but this does not make sense. They jump to the conclusion that one strike definitely would not kill every person on Earth. They say that they solve for our argument by defending forward, defending forward is actually escalatory. According to this card right here, it has a little title. So it just says more worryingly, with more offensive posture, it will be increasingly difficult for states to differentiate between cyber espionage and more damaging, degrading operations. What the United States calls defending forward, China and Russia will call preemptive strikes. So now move to their second subpoint of their second contention. They say that miscalculation is probability could be a problem, but they give no other examples other than the Cold War, which was a long time ago, and we've made many advancements since then. Since they say we have no solvency, but our solvency is saying that U.S. OCOs are the things causing the problems. Now move to their third contention. They're talking about how cyber war is cheap and it directly saves lives, but it doesn't actually. According to the Mantle card, it escalates into a real war, and death is caused by lack of power grids. So now they basically drop our second contention because they only make one mere response to it. They say that we have no solvency, but our solvency is putting more money towards defense down to Wayne. So we're talking about 295 million people dying and a severe 9% decline in GDP, which is an economic recession. And since we take down all their contentions, they have no impacts. But even if you do give them access, most of their impacts don't even have any probability.
Off the clock roadmap, first I'm going to be defending my case, and then I'm going to be going over my opponent's case. Okay. Time starts. Now, first of all, for my first contention, my opponent responds to our case by saying that Iran wouldn't attack because of hurting their own economy, but they're reducing their oil dependency to zero by 2020. And as my partner said, they're being backed into a corner by these sanctions. And Iran has already attacked these shipping channels. We're already seeing the impact, and we're using OCOs now to stop them. So if we take out OCOs, then these impacts would be seen. And if we don't keep Iran in check, look back to our cases and the fact that we say that they have already attacked ships, and that the threat kept oil prices above $100 in the past. So we need to keep Iran's nuclear capabilities in check. For our Israel contention about giving Israel an alternative, we say that in the past Israel was going to use a nuke against Iran, but we stopped this by using Stuxnet. And so far the nuclear capabilities of Iran haven't come back up yet. haven't come back up yet. So this is why we need to use OCOs for keeping Iran's nuclear capabilities in check and preventing Israel from using a nuclear strike. And I know this sounds like a stretch, but it's because it's a preemptive strike that Israel would use a nuke against Iran, because they're hurting Iran's capabilities, so they wouldn't think of seeing any retaliation. So our impact still stands of killing the lives and possibly starting a conventional war with Iran, of killing thousands and possibly killing millions as a result of, as we say, of a nuclear strike. And in our case, we provide evidence that says that a nuclear strike would have devastating effects on the environment that would cause extinction. And they say this wouldn't happen, but we have evidence when we read in our case that this would happen. And now they say that defending forward will be seen as will become escalation, that war will be started. So first of all, these impacts haven't been seen yet. And for the grid intrusions, we say that a power grid has already been hit once, and we haven't seen any blackouts or harm to power generation, and very little effect on the western transmission grid. So our opponent gives evidence for that it would kill 90% of the U.S. population, but we've seen a grid attack, and this hasn't happened. So, and our evidence is better because our evidence actually looks empirically at when an attack on the power grid happened. Okay, well, let me go into the small businesses contention. So, in their last speech, they say that their solvency is by increasing defense, but they don't say this in the first two speeches, so they're not allowed to use it. And anyway, they don't provide any quantifications for defense being their solvency, so they don't get access to the small business contention at all. And for the grid contention, we say that empirically, when a grid was attacked, this didn't lead to 90% of the population dying. And we say that the power grids are very hard to hack, Core F19, and also that in the status quo, people will need to physically touch the grid to attack it, according to O'Flaherty 19. And for the escalation in war, we say defending forward will help solve for this, and they say escalation will happen. But they provide no evidence. They provide no evidence for when a war will be started, how a war will be started. They don't have a time frame. They don't have a time frame for this impact, and they can't get access to this impact. And for Iran, they already have the incentive to attack the Strait with sanctions and attack the U.S.
Okay, we don't have a problem.
Okay. On the clock right now, let me go on. Let me.
Speak low.
Off the clock right now, I'm only saying why we're winning this round, and then going down our opponent's case way. Time starts now. We are winning off a couple main reasons. The first is the fact they dropped their impacts in summary. Not only do they drop their impacts in summary, they literally say that they don't have solvency when we give you the solvency in bond summary, right? So they just say that this solvency stuff is like completely denies our impact. Yet we tell you that their solvency, what they say is defending forward, is completely wrong. As we say, it's escalatory. Once again, this completely this causes their case not to be solved forward. Thus, we go on to like the second reason why is we completely outweigh them. They literally give us they see, even if you do give them access to their impacts, they only give you like 1.3 million people in the army that could possibly die, and then approximately a couple million people dying to nuclear war. Yet they don't give you a certain number. It doesn't matter. That's not going to add up to 295 million people who will die from these power outages, and the fact that we'll be losing billions of dollars thanks to these cyber attacks. Once again, Judge, they try to say that Israel would use nukes against Iran. Yet Iran doesn't even have nukes, so Israel, to be honest, has the upper edge on them. So the fact is that they also say that Iran wouldn't close this when they literally. When we give you the SING card, which says that pretty much Iran wouldn't do this because it would hurt them, and they're actually to 70%. They have a dependency on oil of 70% of their dependency of oil is 70%. They try to say they're trying to bring it down to zero by 2020. Yet we give you a card from 2019 that says, once again, the same card which says that they're still depending on it from 70%. They say that defense has been used and how this hasn't happened. How pretty much the power grids haven't happened yet. It's because these things are because they literally attacked them and they didn't minor. They say malicious. They don't even give you an example or who was actually attacked. It's judges. We're winning because we outweigh, and they don't even have access to their impacts. Thank you.
first reason why we're winning, we prevent nuclear war. They tell us that, it isn't going to be seen, it isn't going to happen. Tensions are already high, and if we're using nuclear, we're like stopping nuclear proliferation with Stuxnet attack. They tell you that they outweigh because they put people into poverty. First of all, it's nuclear war. Nuclear war is incredibly bad. They tell you that it doesn't matter. It's nuclear war. I don't think I need to stress how bad nuclear war would be for everyone involved. Land, dead people, money, it's all gone because of nuclear war. We've already been preventing this with Stuxnet attack, and they tell you that, then why haven't your impacts been seen? Because OCOs are being used in the status quo, because no one's been attacking, because we've been using OCOs. Let's move on to our second reason. We talk about oil. They tell us that Iran isn't going to do this. They've already done it. Iran has already essentially killed 30 million people by increasing oil prices. They've already done it. And if you're backed into a corner, you're going to do whatever you can to defeat or to go against your aggressors, which is the U.S. because the U.S. is highly sanctioned or like massive sanctions. They're going to do whatever they can to support themselves. Let's move on to let's talk about their impacts. They say that Iran is increasing retaliation. That's their only unique solvency to critical infrastructure and small business. They tell you that they don't tell you how many. They don't tell you how many people this is going to happen. We attacked them in like 2010, I think. That's 9 years. Nothing has happened. They tell us that it could happen, it could be happening, but they don't have any real link, and their only real link to this is Iran, which isn't very strong. And they talk about how the grids have been hacked, but we tell you that it's a small hack, and they don't respond to our card that says the grids are hard to hack, and that their impacts aren't going to be seen. In the last 25 years, nothing's happened, no one's died. Let's move on to Wang. We saved tons of people from a U.S. recession. We stopped a nuclear war happening in the Middle East. We essentially saved millions of people from aggression. They don't do anything. They sit back. They don't use OCOs. They allow nuclear proliferation to happen. They stop. They don't have any real uniqueness to.